Let's actually get to it. I was incredibly inspired by the Bernie rally, of course, other than the incredible missed opportunity of not taking Bernie out to one mic, which, I mean, there should have been at least one Nas reference. You were literally right by, you were in the heart of that creative emergence. The visual is extraordinary, actually. You're at a park where you have I believe it's the largest public housing in New York City, which of course is the victim of NYCHA and underinvestment and all of the things that we talk about, of which Bernie's housing plan would radically address in a completely unprecedented way in modern politics. Then you look across the bridge and you see the core of the problem, Wall Street. Then you look straight ahead behind the stage, and there is a power plant. Like, right there. I mean, it was so right there that the first time I ever was in Queensbridge, I knew the power plant existed. But in my just naivete, I remember asking a friend, I was like, is that it? Like this giant monstrosity that looks so obvious of what this is? Of the racism, the class dimensions, the centers and peripheries that it represents. Like, oh yeah, no, that big thing. Yes, that's right there. This thing that hovers over this neighborhood of all of these families. Yep, that's it.
It's almost a little on the nose.
It was quite on the nose. So it was a very powerful visual of everything that is represented really by modern capitalism and all of the things that, that are so basic and so fundamental that Sanders has been fighting for decades, including at a time when, and AOC, I'm really glad that she made this point, that being inside the halls of Congress is no joke, in her words. And she noted the pressure that comes from every single sector in every single way. And then correctly identified the fact that this guy held the flame for decades, when now we've got people copying Bernie and trying to co-opt the message. We'll get to Nina Turner in a second. But it was, this is really even the difference between being in your 30s and like even your late 20s versus being, a Zoomer or whatever we're calling it. Like, calling for national health care was considered weird, extreme, and eccentric through 2016 when Sanders put it on the table. And there are these sparks and shoots: Occupy Wall Street, Fight for 15, Black Lives Matter, Kshama Sawant getting elected to the city council in Seattle, and Amazon is dumping an insane amount of money to try to get her out. So we need to have solidarity and fight for her. That's an incredibly important leader there in Sawant. So let's play, actually, these two clips from AOC. Let's start with number 3, because I think that this really distills what I'm talking about, and I'm so glad she highlighted it. This is significant. AOC, Ilhan Omar, and almost certainly Rashida Tlaib, I'm sure she's going to be endorsing Sanders too, they're really showing that they are here for this. This isn't branding. It isn't politics as aesthetics. It isn't a shift in priorities once you get a position of power. It is, we are of a movement, we're of a mission, and we're going to take the serious political and media risk and dissatisfy a lot of people who, frankly, are fundamentally disrespectful of AOC and Ilhan Omar because they know nothing of their politics and what drives them. We're going to dissatisfy them, and we're going to stay committed to our mission. This is AOC.
It's not just about standing up and saying these things, but behind closed doors, your arm is twisted, the vice pressure of political pressure gets put on you, and every trick in the book, psychological and otherwise, is used to get us to abandon the working class. And it is in And it has been in that experience over the last 9 months that I have grown to appreciate the enormous, consistent, and nonstop advocacy of Senator Bernie Sanders.
There's a great clip of a former Republican Congressman, Bob Ney, who in 2016, he was like, look, I worked with Bernie, I think it was on Veterans Affairs, and he was like, this guy was amazing. Like, no one had the consistency of purpose or delivery for people. And he said one day Bernie came in, asked him to do something to help veterans with him. And Ney said, that sounds good. I'll co-sponsor. Bernie said, no, you should take the lead on this. This isn't about priority of authorship. We need to get this done. You combine that with everything from fighting the forces of modern neoliberalism for decades as a mayor, as a congressman, as a senator, even down to the erasure and contempt that just this entire disgusting media class has for him. I mean, I think he enjoys it on some level. I do think there's like a genuine FDR, like, of course, if you're, some schmuck who doesn't care about working people on CNN, fine. But that would take a psychological toll on anybody. And it takes an enormous amount of commitment, an enormous amount of bigger vision to keep showing up and up and up and up and up and up. And he's the one who needs to do it right now. Look, can anybody doubt for a second? Like, let's be real for 2 seconds. If Bernie was 10 years younger and AOC was 10 years older, he would be backing her for president. He's a mission-driven person.
Yeah.
And now is when he is in the position, he's the leader, he's the candidate. That just is the historical circumstance because he's the guy who held the flame for all these decades. We miss generations of leadership. AOC is only 30 years old. Ilhan Omar is in her 30s. Rashida Tlaib is in her 30s. You miss generations for this actual commitment, not third way stuff, not, technocratic progressive tinkering, but structural reform. Let's take a look at AOC acknowledging that mass mobilization is the only way to even have a prayer of achieving these things.
Now, one thing I'll say is that it's not just what we're fighting for, but it's how we're going to do it. And how we're going to do it is with a mass mobilization of working class people at the ballot box. That's the only way that we are going to win this thing. Because one of our top priorities is not just defeating Donald Trump, but defeating the systems of which he is a symptom.
Of which he is a symptom that we cut out before that. Well, of course, she's absolutely right. And now AOC elevated, and you need that. We'll get to Bernie, who actually I was incredibly moving the way Bernie closed his speech.